Hi guys, it can be very difficult to attack a failure of a policy that you voted for. It's equally difficult to defend a bill that you voted against. So spare a thought for a moment for poor Caroline Nokes, the Tory MP. She was asked when she appeared on the Politics Live show if she voted for a piece of legislation that would impose a minimum service level. She wasn't sure which way she voted, but thought that it wasn't delivering. Now everyone had a bit of a laugh, but there is a serious problem here. Have a listen.
That legislation just doesn't work.
Well, it certainly didn't seem to be working very well this morning on SWR when they were on an overtime ban and it seemed like 1 in 3 trains was running.
I mean, what was the point then of this minimum services legislation? We spent hours on this programme talking about it and the impact potentially on nurses, for example. But in fact, I hadn't actually thought about the fact that the rail operators wouldn't actually, in this case, enforce it.
And look, I'm not very clear as to why that has happened, but the stark reality is that the legislation clearly isn't working. It isn't delivering what Grant Shapps promised and enabling people to get to work.
Did you vote for it?
I will have voted for it, right. I assume. I'm not.
I'm hoping that you will know. I'm hoping that you will know if you voted. Well, let's assume you did vote in favour. You must be pretty disappointed.
Well, look, I was disappointed this morning when the trains weren't working.
Right.
This is pretty bad. Okay. She doesn't know whether she voted for the legislation or not. There are two problems here. First of all, the fact that an MP doesn't know. Now, Caroline Nokes is not the worst of them, not the worst of the Tories, but it is pretty bad that an MP doesn't know whether she voted for or against a piece of legislation. It demonstrates that MPs don't read what's presented to them. Now, I don't know whether it's because they don't have time or whether it's because they just do as the whip tells them. The whip says, you need to vote for this. Okay, I vote for it. I don't care what's contained within it. I do as the party tell me. Now, MPs are supposed to actually read the bills, understand them and vote according to the wishes of their constituents. They're supposed to, of course, follow what the party tells them, but they're supposed to act somewhat independently. So Caroline here doesn't know whether she voted for or against the piece of legislation. Now, she has a problem with it. It would turn out pretty bad if she had voted for it because she obviously hadn't read it. She doesn't understand it. But there's another problem. The problem itself with the legislation. You have, when it comes to the rail network, well, the train companies are not implementing a minimum service level. Why? Probably because they don't have the staff and they don't want to pay overtime. So when it comes to doctors and nurses, you can't impose a minimum service level because you don't have the staff either. So none of this makes any sense. You have legislation which is trying to push a minimum service level, and the entities that you're pushing it upon, be it the rail network, be it the NHS, they don't actually have the staff available. And they say we can't have a minimum service level if we don't have the staff. And on the other hand, you have MPs voting for this, or maybe not, but voting for it without actually understanding the legislation. These types of policies shouldn't be rushed through Parliament. Time needs to be made available for them to understand, to read it, to understand what they're voting for. Because otherwise you'll end up with situations like this. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.